going to be presenting this presentation on sickles. I hope you did all your reading. Are you all getting my emails and following them?
Yes.
Okay, great. So they're good. This is a great audience. They're all prepared.
Right, there you go. So last week we were working on Gracie's, and today we're going to be working with something called sickle scalers. And this is what they look like, and you have two different ones in your cassettes. And basically the use of the sickles, they're used to remove calculus deposits from the crowns of the teeth. And they're only used supragingivally, so you do not go sub with them. Supragingival only. The only way you might go subgingival with them is if there was a piece of calculus and you wanted, and it was an extension. It was the big piece of calculus. It was a little bit subgingival underneath the gum line, so that's the only reason you would go sub. Other than that, it's only supragingival, and it's used to remove calculus and to remove stains.
Can I just add something there? So this little piece of calculus that you can see supra might extend 1 to 2 millimeters below the gingival margin. So you can go below 1 to 2 millimeters. But where should you not go with this instrument? The root surface. You can really damage the root
I was just going to ask, why are we only going supra with this instrument? Yeah.
Because it's very sharp, because it's triangular in its cross section, it has a point, and it's very sharp. It would damage tissue and also it would damage the root.
Right.
It has a pointed tip rather than a rounded top.
Okay, so then we'll get into design. The design alert. Okay, good.
So its uses is to remove medium to large size supragingival calculus, and you cannot use it on the roots. It's not recommended. And these are just some types of sickle scalers that we're going to go into. Now, the posterior sickle, you guys have this in your cassettes. It's called the 204S, 204S. And can anyone tell me, both ends, do they look similar? Do they look the same? Are they paired? Are they unpaired? Unpaired or paired?
Paired.
Paired. Now why are they paired? Now the anterior sickle, the 533, is it paired or unpaired?
Unpaired.
Okay. And both sides are used for the anterior. Now, why would I use, now you see the side 33, which is the smaller side, and then there's side 5, which is more curved. So side 33, which would be this side, it's a straight sickle. And then side 5 would be considered more of a curve. So where would I use, like, if I wanted, why would I use this side? Why would I use a smaller one?
Maybe for the mandibular anteriors,
Okay,
because they're smaller teeth.
okay. Why else would I want to use a smaller? How would the teeth look if I wanted to use a smaller one? Would they be perfectly aligned? Crowded teeth, exactly. If the teeth are crowded, if they're misaligned, if the contacts are really tight, if you use side 33, the smaller one, it really helps you get into tight spaces. Now, the sickle scaler is, like we said, it's for the crowns of the teeth, and we keep stressing that you should not be used on the root surfaces. I'm going to keep saying it, don't use it on the root surfaces. Okay, now, we're going to talk about the design of the working end. Now, the sickle has a pointed back. Usually the instruments that we've been working on, what kind of back have they had?
Rounded.
Good. And this instrument has a pointed tip, and the instruments that we've been working with have what kind of tip? Exactly. So now sometimes when we talk about this, we're not going to say the toe third. What are we going to say? Exactly. Very good. Now, the cross-section of this instrument, it's triangular. So usually the other ones that we've been working with, they look something like this or more curved. So this one is a triangular cross-section. And there are 2 edges per working end. Now, the face is perpendicular to the lower shank at 90 degrees. Can anyone tell me, what does this remind you of? Does this remind?
The universal.
Exactly. The universal instruments. They were perpendicular to the lower shank at 90 degrees. Does everyone realize that?
Yeah.
this is gonna be, the way that you're gonna work with this is very similar to the universal instruments. Now, design characteristics of the tip. It's a pointed tip, like we said, and it's triangular in cross-section, and there are two cutting edges per working end. So now because it's just like the universal, does that mean that we can just adapt it to the tooth, or do we have to angle it? You have to angle it, exactly. Now the Gracies, when you use the Gracies, did we have to just adapt it to the tooth, or did we have to angle it? Good. Perfect, you guys did this. Okay. Now the unique design characteristics. The face of the sickle is perpendicular to the lower shank, like we said, 90 degrees. And there are two cutting edges on a straight blade that end in a sharp point, and it's also known as a Jacquet scaler. So at the bottom right here, you see the one that we said was unpaired. So this one has a curve, and this one has, oh, I do it up here. Yep. All right. See this one, how we said? This one right here. This can be, is known as a Jacquet. Okay? All right, and as you can see, there are two cutting edges, and then there's a face, and it's 90 degrees. There's two lateral surfaces. Now, the sickle scaler is the straight blade, which is the one that I just showed you, the Jacquet. It's good for surfaces that can be used, facial, lingual surfaces, and also can be used interproximally. So you can use it everywhere, okay? They're not just, they can be used facial, lingual, mesial, distal. Now the curved blade is the same thing, it's just curved and it ends in a sharp point. So it's also used anteriorly. Now, instrumentation. Both sides, both cutting edges of the blade can be used, like I said, for mesial, distal, facial, lingual. And it's the same thing, like we said, as the universal, using anterior and posterior designs. So the one right here that we said was unpaired is for anterior. This is anterior sickle. And the one that's right here, which is paired, is posterior. And you guys can see it's posterior because it's curved. You use this for the posterior, and this one is more straight. This is for the anterior.
What are those shanks called? What is the anterior shank called?
Straight shank.
And what is the posterior one called?
Compass.
I can't stand it.
I have a question. What's the advantage of having the pointed back rather than a rounded back on the sickle?
Well, the way it's designed, it has to be pointed because there are two sharp edges. It goes into a point. It's not gonna, can't be curved. Okay, now for anterior teeth. When you establish the angulation. Now the face is going to be, of the working end, is going to be 90 degree angle to the lower shank. And when you position the lower shank parallel to the tooth surface, you can't position it at 90 degrees because that's incorrect. Okay, because you know, what did we have to position? When we positioned the Gracies, when you positioned it to the tooth, we had to say, oh, the terminal shank, make sure it's parallel to the long axis of the tooth. Okay, now with this, you can't do that. Okay, that's incorrect. So say for a second, if I were, you know, we're doing anterior, but, so if I had it like this, for example, if I'm holding it like this, and you're about to doing instrumentation that's not correct, you would have to adapt the working end like that. So when you're instrumenting, I'm going to show you the correct way later on, but I just want to make a point that it's not always when you're instrumenting that it's not going to be 90 degrees, you're not going to go like that. It's going to be more curved, okay? angulation is achieved by tilting the lower shank towards the tooth surface at 70 to 80 degrees. So you have to remember that 70 to 80 degrees face to tooth surface angulation. So you're going to tilt the lower shank towards the tooth surface. Because if you didn't, what would happen?
You wouldn't have the cutting edge, you wouldn't cut it.
Okay, besides it not cutting, what would, okay, but you have a sharp instrument. What would happen?
You cut it to damage.
You're going to damage the tissue. Now, we're doing the anteriors, so when you work on the anteriors, you're going to start at the midline of the tooth, and you're going to work towards the proximal surface, like we've been doing, okay? So you're going to position the tip third of the working end near the midline of the tooth, and you're going to tilt the lower shank towards the tooth surface to establish the correct angulation. So you're not going to keep it really parallel, you're going to keep it curved, okay, towards the tooth. You're going to make strokes across the facial surface towards the mesial surface. I'm going to show you how it's done in a second. At the line angle, you're going to roll the instrument handle and you're going to maintain adaptation of the tip third of the working end. So basically it's similar to what you've been doing all along. It's just that the tip of this is sharp and pointed, okay? So you're going to continue making strokes as you work along the mesial surface. I know it says here mesial surface, but it doesn't matter if you start at the distal surface. It doesn't matter if you want to start surfaces away towards you, mesial, distal. On this PowerPoint it says mesial, so don't get confused with that, okay? It's just an example. So you have to make sure always 70 to 80 degrees. Yep.
I just have a question. I was reading the book and it said, like I didn't understand how to go into proximal. It says here that for a new clinician, there's a tendency to trace the pointed contours of the papilla, and like it shows a picture that you.
I'm gonna show you. Just
Oh, okay.
one
All right.
second. we're getting there.
Okay. Yeah, but that's a good question.
Yeah, we're getting there. Okay. You have to make sure your strokes are at least halfway across the mesial surface. So you're going to start at the midline, and then you would make your strokes to the mesial surface. You would roll and go into proximal. All right, now this is kind of what you're asking.
Medina.
Yes.
No,
Okay. So in these pictures, it's showing you incorrect versus correct. So if you adapt the instrument incorrectly, you're going to damage the papilla. So if you can see here, this picture is a little hard to see, but if you see here, the blade is a little bit more open. So if she was to continue going that way, what's going to happen? Exactly. So this one, she has it more, the shank curved a little bit, so it's going towards, if she were to continue going and she would roll, is it going to damage the tissue? No, exactly. So you see how the blade is closed, a little bit more closed towards the tooth, and here it's really open. You don't want the blade, the face of the blade to be open that much. Okay, same thing here. This is a better picture. Remember we said we don't want it to be with the long axis of the tooth. The only time you're going to put it towards the long axis of the tooth is to determine the right working end, which we're going to get to. That's the only time you're going to try to make it parallel to see when you get to the posterior sickle is to determine the right working end. That's the only time you're going to put it parallel. Other than that, it's always going to be tilted at an angle like that. Okay, so this would be the correct way to do it, because if we were to do it like this, it's automatically going to go into the tissue and it's going to damage the tissue. But if you put it at an angle, it's going to go here. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is the posterior sickle we're going to do. Does anyone have any questions about the anterior before I go on? Alright, let me just show you quickly the anterior before I do go on to the posterior, how to use this.
turn it
Right.
off?
You want me to turn it,
Yeah.
I'll turn this off. How
Oh,
about that?
No.
No? This one?
Keep going.
Okay.
So say you were to start right here, you would start at the midline, right? And you would go down. And you would roll it. You see how I have an angle now?
Yeah.
You see how the angle, you see the angle right there? I'm not going like this, my instrument is not coming out of the tooth. It's gonna be at an angle like that,
She's burying the blade.
okay? Now, same thing, I would start at the midline, I would go down. I would roll it. And just make sure it's at an angle, because if I were to stay straight like that, it's gonna damage the tissue, okay?
Okay, I might want to just add, I didn't emphasize this with my group necessarily, about putting the instrument on the tooth and actually using the tooth as the guide to go down to the gingival margin. But you did demonstrate that, and I do recommend that you can do that, where you actually plant the instrument on the tooth and use it as a guide to go down to the gingival margin and then activate your stroke.
So what you're saying is this, and go down. And then
See
you
that?
activate.
Yeah.
From the midline, and you go down, and then you activate. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the posterior sickle. Now the posterior sickle has two working ends. And this is a type of 34, 35. You guys don't have this one, but it's a different type. All right, there are two methods that can be used to pick the correct working end. And it doesn't matter which way you choose, which method you choose. You can just pick the one that's easier for you. Some people find one way easier, some people find the other way easier, so whatever works. Now the first way is the lower shank as a visual clue. And you're going to establish a finger rest. And then you're going to place the working end in the get ready zone of the distal. That's what I was talking about before. That's the only time you're going to make the end parallel to the distal surface of the tooth is when you're determining the working end. So you use the lower shank as a visual clue. So right here it shows that the lower shank is parallel to the distal surface, and the functional shank, it goes up and over the tooth. Functional shank up and over the tooth, and it's parallel, that's how it's the right working end. Now this is the incorrect working end. The lower shank obviously is not parallel to the long axis of the tooth, and the functional shank is down and around. Now method 2, this is another method that you can determine the correct working end. It's using the inner and outer cutting edges. And so basically you hold the instrument so that you're looking down at the face. And then you're going to determine which cutting edge is closer to the handle. So because of the bend in the shank, one edge is closer to the handle. So which edge, so would this be the inner or the outer? Which edge is closer to the handle? So what would this be?
Inner.
Good. And that would be?
Outer.
Perfect. There you go. Inner is closer to the handle, and then the outer is farther from the handle. And the inner cutting edge is used on the distal surfaces. So remember that, inner, distal surfaces. And then the outer is used everywhere else, facial, lingual, mesial. Okay? Yes, Professor?
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Another way to look at that is the inner cutting edge is under the bend, and the outer cutting edge is on the outside of the bend.
What she's saying is the inner is on the inside of the bend. This is the bend, and the outer is on the outside of the bend. Do you see that? Now we're going to establish the angulation, 70 to 80 degrees, face to tooth surface angulation. and the face of the working end is perpendicular to the lower shank. And you have to position the lower shank parallel to the tooth surface. And when you do that, when you position it 90 degrees, like we said, same thing, that's wrong, that's incorrect. So you do not want to position it 90 degrees to the tooth surface. You want to position it what?
70 to 80.
Good. So the correct angulation is achieved by tilting the lower shank towards the tooth surface, 70 to 80 degrees. So basically this just shows how the cutting edges are applied. So if you were to use the instrument, you would use one side. You would use one side of the instrument, and you would go distally, and then you would just reposition it. But then if you were to do the lingual, you would flip the instrument, obviously, and use one side, and then reposition it. Okay? Just the different colors just make a point that you have to flip the instrument. Okay? Okay, incorrect versus correct. So, can everyone see? Say this picture can be used also just to show you how to line up to determine the correct working end, even though this is incorrect. But if you want to determine which end to work with, you would line it up with the distal, and then it's parallel and it's up and over. So that would be how to position it. But if you were to instrument, you wouldn't do it like that. You see how it's so parallel? If you were instrumenting, you would turn it at a slight angle. You see how it's at a slight angle? Yeah. 70 to 80 degrees. Same thing here. You can tell it kind of looks the same, but you can tell from right here how it's away from the tooth. You want to bring it towards the tooth. You see that, the difference? And we're going to start instrumentation the same way as we've always been doing it with the posterior teeth. You're going to start at the distal surface. You're going to select the correct working end. You're going to position the tip third of the working end at the distal-facial line angle. But today we're going to be working on the lingual surface of the teeth. So you're going to position it at the distal lingual line angle. Okay? If you're doing posterior teeth, we're going to work on 19 and 20 for the right-handed people, and we're going to work on 29 and 30 for the left-handed linguals, okay, for the posterior. So you're going to work back towards the distal surface. You're going to check your angulation. You're going to tilt the lower shank towards the surface of the tooth. And the face should be at a 70 to 80 degree angle to the distal surface. And it's the same sequence that we've been doing. So you're going to start at the, say today, distal lingual line angle. You're going to work your way distally, bless you. And then you're going to reposition at the distal lingual line angle. And then you're going to work lingually. And then you're going to all the way until you get to the mesial. Okay? And then a key point that we want to make today especially is that say you were to work on, as we were working on say 19 and 20 lingually, when you get to this tooth, when you get to 20, you don't take the instrument out of the mouth and then put it back in the mouth and reposition. You're going to stay in the mouth and reposition, okay? So when you go here, then go here, when you reach this point right here, you want to get to the next tooth, you finish with the mesial, you don't take the instrument out of the mouth and then go back in the mouth and position it at the distal lingual line angle. You're just going to take it out of here and then you're going to reposition it as you're inside the mouth and then start going distally, okay? Yes,
Do you stay on the fulcrum when you're doing that?
You can stay on the fulcrum, unless you have to move. If you want to move a little farther back, depends.
So about the question I asked before, like the gingiva.
Uh-huh.
Are we allowed to do that?
She's talking about the proximal surface.
Yeah, the
When you go
proximal
into the proximal, it appears
Uh-huh.
that you're a little subgingivally.
It's good, that's how the instrument is gonna adapt. You're not gonna go subgingivally, but it's gonna tilt, yeah.
Okay, so.
Not this semester. This semester you're instrumentating, next semester you'll be actually scaling.
Okay.
This semester, we want you to see the end of the instrument so you know how you're angulating it. As you get a little more skilled, then we're gonna let you go into the sulcus and tip it, you don't see it.
But that's what the
This way you have-
calculus is, and you'll
exactly.
be able to remove this calculus
Exactly.
with that instrument.
Because of no flossing.
But
So-
what I want to bring you back to is, in the picture, it appears when you go into the proximal that you're subgingivally, just because of the architecture of the gingiva. This is a supragingival instrument, but when you go in the proximal surface, you have the papilla that is sometimes pyramidal. So it looks like you're under the gingiva, but it's that papilla that's.
You're
really
just on the
crown
side of the
too.
pyramid, is what she's
Right.
trying to say.
It's here on the
Even though it
papilla.
looks like you're underneath,
Right.
you're just like right here.
You're still super,
Yeah.
you're still supragingival.
Yeah.
You know.
Like say this was the gingiva, it's gonna look like you're here, but it's just that you're on this, there's gingiva here, say this is the gingiva, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Looks like the sea.
Can I ask them a question?
Yes.
When you're going from, let's say, 30 to 29 on the line angle, after you're done with 30, okay, on the distal mesial line angle for the left-handed, it would be tooth number, that would be left-handed. For the right-handed, it would be 19 and 20. Would you take the working end out to go, I know you said out, not out of the mouth, your hand, but the cutting edge, would you take it away and back up? How would you remove it? Can anybody ask to get to number 20?
What do you mean, take it out and then adapt it?
Right, you don't take it from,
You don't like
switch,
switch.
you don't just switch from one to the other because you have the pillow there.
Yeah.
That's what I want to make sure you do, is that you remove it with your fulcrum still there, and remove it out the instrument, and then adapt it to, let's say, 20 or 29 if you're left-handed. Do you follow me, everybody? Am I
You're
confusing you?
moving the tip.
You're
That's what
moving the
you're doing.
tip away. Okay, you're not just going across, because that was the,
You don't want to cut off the patella.
that's my concern.
We'll be doing gingivectomy.
That was
And
my
it's
concern.
Right.
Okay.
You see what she's saying, right? She's saying that you just don't go like this. There's tissue here. You take it out.
Right.
And then you reposition. You don't slice across it.
Thank you. I just need to make sure so students, when you're doing that, and it just made me a little nervous.
Okay. And this is just another example of correct angulation. So they're tilting the lower shank slightly towards the tooth surface. You see how it's angled up there? It's angled towards the tooth. It's not parallel. And that's it. I'm going to show you how it's done now. Does anyone have any questions before? It's pretty much the same, but the tip is different, right? Is everyone making the connection?
Yes.
You guys understand? Okay. There we go. Now, I'm right-handed, so we're going to do lingual. All right, so
Can you all see?
Yeah.
now the main thing about this is, okay, first, I'm going to show you. Would this be considered, am I using the right end?
No.
Okay.